Satya, Satya, Shatarine, 1/3 of flowers. Esha Pushpanjali, Esha Pushpanjali. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Oh, I don't know the name of this boat. Does it have a name? It's also called Jaladuta, is it? Jaladuta. Yeah. Well, this very special boat, no doubt, this Jaladuta. You know the very word, those who are of Indian descent, of course, and maybe others, know what it means. You know what it means? Yes, and messenger. So it's the messenger, the one who brings the message across the water. The very boat itself is so prolific. Of course, the boat is no longer visible now, as far as I understand. But the message is more than visible. So we were asked to speak a few words about who are we. Well, that's the all-important question in one sense. Who are we? Good question. Well, we're just describe basically a little bit on our level of what we can kind of relate with. My name is Janananda Das Goswami, and I'm made in England. This is New England. Is this part of New England? Okay. And so I'm made in Old England, and they're also from the Queens. You're from the Queens? That's the Queens. So they're representing Old England here in New York. So I joined, or came in contact with, let's say, the Hare Krishna movement in London. Actually, I came in contact in Birmingham, of all places. It's a long story, won't tell that, but I first came to the temple in London, and we first met Srila Prabhupada when he came to London in 1972. And that was, it was a very special event, actually. It was really interesting because those days, and I guess still the same now, that, devotees were really enthusiastic, because you don't quite have the same thing now. Prabhupada is coming a little bit like it today, but, when all of us can remember when Prabhupada was coming, isn't it? What it was like, and how we all felt. And I was a fairly new devotee in that when Prabhupada came in 72, in July 72. But we had temple president then. His name was Dhananjaya, and he'd arranged for Srila Prabhupada to have a reception at Heathrow Airport in London, and rented a particular reception hall, So Prabhupada, they made arrangements with Jai Hari Prabhu, was like doing all the official organizations, and he was there arranging VIP entry for Srila Prabhupada, so he didn't have to go through the usual, rigmarole of customs and stuff. So it was going to be a big program. They'd invite at least 100 people from the press, and I guess television and stuff. So about 4 or 5 of us, 5 of us to be exact, were sent to the airport in the morning early to get everything ready, clean the hall. The hall was about the size of this boat, actually, a little bit bigger in terms of the floorage, slightly wider, about the same length. So we had to go out there and clean it, and then put all the chairs and tables, and the devotees had cooked a fabulous, amazing feast also. Prabhupada was due to arrive at about 11 o'clock, something like that. So we were going to have a program and, press conference and stuff, and then prasad for everybody. That was the idea. So about 5 of us went out there in a pretty beaten up old van. Sort of, not too bad, but pretty beaten up, like they usually were in those days. And I was given the job of after we all cleaned, was putting all the chairs out and getting all the tables and everything like that ready. And a couple of others, Mahavishnu Swami and Swineboard, who's now in Australia, Prabhupada had a very big Vyasasana, but I think that day we didn't take the big one, we had a smaller version. But they were putting this Vyasasana up in this hall for Prabhupada, and we had to take it to pieces, to get it out the temple room. It was a very buried place. It was a very small temple. The door was very narrow. So we had to take the Vyasasana into pieces and then put it back together again. So they were doing that. They were kind of handymen. And then there was another devotee, Dhiranayake. He was looking after the prasad. He was getting all that set up. And then Jai Hari was off somewhere trying to sort out Prabhupada's entry and stuff. So I was doing the chairs, and this is about, I guess it's about 9:30 or something in the morning. And, expecting Prabhupada at 11. The devotees most of the devotees were still at the temple in Bury Place. So suddenly Jai Hari opened the door, which was, to say, Prabhupada's Vyasam was up there, and the entry door was over there. So suddenly Jai Hari came through the door and declared, "Prabhupada's already here." So we just didn't know what to do. Most of us were not really prepared for that. So I kind of froze. I didn't know what to. What I'm supposed to, what is this, a pre-run or something? What is it? I didn't know. And then within about couldn't have been more than 5 seconds, Prabhupada walked through the door. Wow. That was the first time I saw Prabhupada in person, and it was quite a shock. And I really didn't know, because we were just kind of like, bhaktas, and we were just doing what we were told. I didn't know if it was part of the program, whether this was supposed to happen like this or what. But it was quite a shock, and then I realized it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Well, it was, but the devotees didn't think it was going to happen like this. So I kind of hid behind the chairs, which were still... I didn't know what to expect, Oh my God, I didn't know what was going to happen. And Prabhupada just kind of walked in. I could see him. He just walked in from there, and he walked straight up to the Vyasasana at the end, and he just sat on the Vyasasana. Now, there was nobody there except for about 40, I got about half the chairs were out by that time. And there was nobody at all except for me hiding behind the chairs and 2 devotees behind the Vyasasana holding it together because they hadn't screwed it up yet. It was I could see their arms, one each side, Mahavishnu with their chests up against the back and their arms on the side. And Prabhupada just sat down there, And there was Dhiranayake kind of behind the prasad. Wondering, he was the only one there that Prabhupada could probably see. And then, of course, Jai Hari was there. And Prabhupada just sat there, and I could see him looking around. He said, "Where are all the devotees?" And hopefully I'm all blooped or something. He says the year before. And then Jai Hari explained that we thought you were coming at 11 o'clock, Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada called over his servant, Nanda Kumar, was with Prabhupada then as his servant. Prajumna was in the background somewhere fiddling around with the baggage in the baggage lounge somewhere. And Sham Sundar was around somewhere. And that was about it, And Prabhupada just sat there, and he just sat there for a few minutes and said, "So, where are all the devotees?" And then Jai Hari said, "They're all at the temple, Srila Prabhupada. They haven't come yet." So, and Prabhupada said, "Okay then, we shall go back to the temple." So, there was no press conference. Prabhupada just went back to the temple. And the funny thing, but before he went, he asked, he looked over and saw there was prasadam over there. Lots of nice prasadam. So Prabhupada called him, he just gestured, Nanda Kumar, to bring a plate. So Nanda Kumar brought over a plate of prasad for Prabhupada, and Prabhupada sampled a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I noticed he really liked this preparation, chira, chabda. This one, fried chickpeas and fried flat rice and different things, or puff rice, different things like that, all fried up together. And he filled it, he had a tiffin, and he had Nanda Kumar fill it up with this preparation. He liked it very much. So you want to please Prabhupada, he likes that preparation very much. And so he took that away, and then they all left, and we were left there till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because, they took the vehicle, and they forgot about us. We had no money whatsoever. We couldn't even make a phone call, There's no phone. Nobody answered the phone because Prabhupada was back at the temple, and there was like a roaring kirtan, and Prabhupada, we were stuck there. We missed the whole thing. But that was my first time I saw Prabhupada in person, and what to say. And we could go on, but we'll let the other devotees speak. But one thing I like to say, because it's my service to say this, is that in this poem, which Adarshi Prabhu read out early on, Markane Bhagavat Dharma, which is basically speaking, you can say, the guideline to our whole mission and movement. And devotees should read this regularly and meditate upon it, because this is really Prabhupada's, mission statement in one sense. It really is an important poem. And you can sing it too. We often sing this beautiful song. It's very beautiful. And to just meditate on Srila Prabhupada, especially we are in Boston, 46 years pretty much to the day when Prabhupada arrived here. What did you say, September the 18th when he arrived? 17th. And what's the date today? 17th today. So it's pretty much today. 46 years ago, I know there's lots of things to be said, but the main thing I want to say about that is, the last part of that poem, the last part is Prabhupada signing off, "You're insignificant, most insignificant beggar." But before that, in the previous line where he says, "I have no devotion, I have no knowledge, I have no devotion, I simply have faith in the holy name of Krishna." And this is basically speaking, the foundation of this movement is based upon chanting, or let's say serving the Lord in this age of Kali by performing congregational chanting of the holy names. And the previous two verses before that, Prabhupada said, "My Lord, you somehow or another you brought me here. If you want me to dance, then you have to make me dance, make me dance, make me dance as you like." The whole poem is one of showing us actually the mood of Krishna consciousness, how we can depend upon Krishna. Not that we have any, abilities or quality. We may have some so-called plumes given to us by the Lord, but really speaking, the only credit we have is when we develop or understand this mood of Srila Prabhupada, being totally dependent upon him, and so grateful to Srila Prabhupada for that. So, as Dara Krishna Prabhupada mentioned earlier on, that we have an opportunity after this to go on Harinam Sankirtan. And this is really how we can, by trying to spread Krishna consciousness, trying to preach Krishna consciousness, is the only way we can never repay our debt to Srila Prabhupada. There's no way. But at least we can endeavor. And the best way to do that is to try whatever way we can to spread the holy names of Krishna to everyone we can, in any way we can, however it may be. Chant the names ourselves and try to give that opportunity to others. So right now, this is the last few days of the official ISKCON World Holy Name Week. Some of you may be aware of that. I don't know if you're having any special programs here in Boston, but how do you say Boston? Boston. But this is really the place where, first step, Prabhupada's first step. So they have the Boston two-step, is that what they call it? Yeah? This is where Prabhupada put his first step as well. So please come and join us in dancing and chanting, and if you can, on the way back to the temple. It's the World Holy Name Festival. We want to try to increase the chant. This is how the world will change, by the introduction of the chanting of the holy names all over the world. So please try to take it. It's it's officially up till the 20th of this month, the official World Holy Name Week. Although the dates are a little different in different places, but that's the official last day. So next few days, please try to chant more. Tomorrow you're having Rath Yatra, is that right? Wonderful opportunity, more and more chanting of the holy name, then a festival in the park, is that right? So plenty of chants there for chanting, dancing, and distributing mercy of Lord Chaitanya, which Srila Prabhupada brought here first to this amazing, he brought it here to Boston. You're very graced to be here. This is my first time here for this festival. We've been to Boston several times, but not for this festival. And we're very privileged and thankful to be here, and thank all the organizers and all the devotees here for giving your association, giving us this chance to be here and remember Srila Prabhupada, and how when we were hearing the little reading upon the Leela Amrita, how Prabhupada was alone here. There was no one to greet him. There was no one who knew what on earth he was doing here. There was, really speaking, you imagine what it felt like. It's almost amazing. And it's just wonderful to reflect upon. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much indeed. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jaladuta ki jai. Shri Jaladuta ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Haribol. Hare Krishna. Thank you. We will hand down the line.
Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nevasisa Sunyavadi Pasatati Starane. So We're here to express our love and gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said in his last days that your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate amongst each other when I'm gone. So this reads like a Vedic mantra, actually. So I'd like to speak on something what I had not spoken about before. This is in, okay, I'll speak first how I became a devotee. For those who didn't know, I became a devotee in Boston. My name is Bhushara Das. I became a devotee in Boston. I was living in Boston, and one day I was going down in the train, in the tunnel, and the train was going. And actually there was a bum on the train, a vagrant. And he had a magazine. And for some reason he threw the magazine in the air like that, and the magazine flew right across to me and fell on the ground. It was a BTG, Krishna Lift and Govardhan Hill. And and actually there was a friend of mine who was next to me. He said, look, this guy threw the book for you. Why don't you pick it up? So it seemed like the whole world was conspiring to make me a devotee at that point. So I picked up that magazine, and I read that magazine. I became very much enchanted by Srila Prabhupada, and I became a devotee. I found out where the temple was in Boston, and that's how I became a devotee. Very nice. So I can't look down on bums. Right? So when Prabhupada came to Philadelphia in 1975, there was a big Rath Yatra there, and it was very exciting. I remember Srila Prabhupada came from the airport, and this one devotee, little child, Rabindra Swarup's son, Yudhisthira, he was dancing. He was dancing, and then he took his shirt off and threw it, and Prabhupada said, look at this. Prabhupada was very happy to see his enthusiasm, the little children, you know. And he made everybody, all the grown-ups looked at him like, wow, where can we get such devotion like this? You know, it was very nice. And then we all took off and went back to the temple. And yeah. And I chanted for a little bit for Srila Prabhupada in the garden. We had a nice garden there. I was very fortunate to do that. And but anyway, we went inside the temple room, and the kirtan was going on, and Srila Prabhupada started distributing cookies. Somebody bought a big tray of cookies, and they started distributing. And so everybody would put their hand and get a cookie. So I got my cookie, and I asked this devotee, what do I do? And this devotee said, eat it quickly before you have to share it with somebody. So I just took it right away. I didn't ask any questions. And the next day was a nice initiation ceremony. And me and a bunch of other devotees got initiated. But something very nice happened when I was coming up for initiation. Srila Prabhupada looked at me and said, your name is Bhushara. And everybody looked at, what is this? And nobody can understand what's the meaning of this. But Srila Prabhupada knows what the meaning is. I don't know what the meaning is, but he does. And so, like this, everything with Srila Prabhupada was totally amazing and beyond your imagination. I don't know what the meaning is. But it seemed to me Srila Prabhupada was encouraging me and congratulating me on being a devotee and being determined in that way. So you always get reciprocation like this from Srila Prabhupada. Everywhere there was some devotion that someone had, Srila Prabhupada would immediately fan it and get it bright, you know. And Srila Prabhupada had this ability to make somebody very enthusiastic by a glance, by a gesture, by anything. I remember this one time, Srila Prabhupada was putting on a sweater. And he was putting on the sweater. His head was under the sweater. And his arms were out. Everybody was looking. Where's his head? Where's his head? And then his head popped out, and everybody said, Jai! So, you know, the little thing that Srila Prabhupada did amazed everybody. A hand gesture, a movement, a walk, a glance, everything. I remember in 1972, I got a direct glance from Srila Prabhupada. And that glance from Srila Prabhupada remained with me for the whole of my life. You know, so this is how powerful it is, the association of a pure devotee. Without Srila Prabhupada, nothing can go on. This is a great lesson. Krishna is teaching this, that without my pure devotee, without loving him, without following his orders, nothing will go on. So this is the way to Krishna, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Tadvedi paripasthena paripatena sevaya upadeksanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadashinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master, make inquiries, and submission has to be there. Not that we approach a spiritual master in a challenging way. Well, he knows this. Well, I know this. He's a man. I'm a man. No. And this is where you can become Krishna conscious, where you see someone is not exactly like you are. And then we can advance nicely. So I'd like to stop here and let other devotees speak. I know there's a few devotees who want to speak. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Nitai Gauranga, Jai Radhe.
Sure? Yeah.
At least your name.
Hare Krishna. My name is Akinchana Krishna, and I first saw Prabhupada in 1975 early. Saw him a few times after that. Just trying to hold on to his lotus feet. Thank you.
Kinchana Prabhu. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pacharane Nirvisheshi Sandhivare Paskatya Deshitarane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol Prabhus, my name is Dronacharya Guru Das, and everybody calls me Drona. Let's see how I became a devotee. I had left college after 2 years, and I was hitchhiking around the country, and I came to Gainesville, Florida, and I asked. There was a place called the Corner Drugstore where you could put your backpack. I had a backpack full of philosophy books, and I had been searching around, investigating different things and rejecting them all, and still searching what is the absolute truth, what is the meaning in life. You know, I know it's not to go to college and just get a job like my father, and that's where I was at. And this is in 1974. And so I asked, when I went to this place where hippies would go and leave their backpacks, I asked, is there some place where you can get some vegetarian food? Because I was vegetarian, and they said, yes, there's the Hare Krishna devotees out at the Plaza of the Americas, which is the big park at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And they had a free lunch program, and this lunch prasadam program, it still exists today. It's been going on all these years. And so I met the devotees there, and they invited me to come to the temple later that evening. So they told me where the temple was. So I made my way to the temple, and it was in the evening. There was an evening program, had prasadam, and then there was hot milk afterwards, and everyone would sit around outside having hot milk prasadam. We always did that. And one devotee named Mahaprabhu gave me a small book, The Perfection of Yoga. And I was determined I was going to continue on my journey down to Key West. And, you know, I wanted to go from all the way up north to all the way down south. So he gave me The Perfection of Yoga, and he said, but you must come back here to Gainesville and return this book to me. A little Perfection of Yoga. You have to come back and return my book, you know. So this was obviously his trick, which I didn't realize at the time, but I felt obligated. I had to come back. So I wasn't down south very long. I came back to the temple, returned Mahaprabhu, to return his book. He said I could keep it. And, right. Perfection of Yoga. Saved my life. Huh?
You got it back again.
I got it back again. That's wonderful.
Make sure you give it back to me, yeah?
Yeah, here. Okay. Where do I have to go to give it back to you? I'll go anywhere.
Like next year on the boat.
Okay. Anyway, I returned to the temple, and then I didn't leave. I stayed in the temple, became a bhakta. And
in those days, wasn't it? You just
yeah,
join, you know, it doesn't happen how much.
yeah.
Did he offer that you stay here?
Yes, yeah. I was invited to stay. You can stay and come to the ashram and explain. I could be a brahmachari and what that meant, and I was right from day one asking all these. I was very critical about philosophies. I was like, examining these different ones and rejecting them. So I had all these criteria. You must be vegetarian because the animals have a soul like all of us, and they're God's children also. So the Hare Krishna movement passed that test, and I had all these different criteria, and no matter what I asked, and there was always an answer. I could not. There was nothing. I wasn't dissatisfied with any. There was nothing lacking in the philosophy, and so I was very satisfied with all the philosophy. And then, of course, with the kirtans and the prasadam, and then and chanting japa, getting up and chanting japa was just, it was just such magic, and in those days, we didn't have Srila Prabhupada Murti. We had a picture of Srila Prabhupada on the Vyasa-san. And, we had Srila Prabhupada on cassette tapes, and these tapes would come in all the time. And so we would hear Srila Prabhupada giving classes in various temples and places around the world. And so that's kind of how I initially develop my attachment for Srila Prabhupada, is listening to his voice on these tapes and chanting japa in front of his picture and doing Guru Puja. So anyway, I think it was January of 1975. I was initiated in 1975, but I wasn't initiated yet in January. And Srila Prabhupada was coming to the temple in Miami, which was in a place called Coconut Grove, which previously had the material world infamy of being a place where a big famous hotel had burned down, Coconut Grove, Miami. And but the devotees had a very nice temple there. And so we heard Prabhupada was coming down there, and my temple president, Amarinda Das, said, if you want to see Srila Prabhupada, you have to go out and book distribution for a week, and then at the end of your travels, you can come to Miami and see Srila Prabhupada. So we were all excited, and there was no better way to go see Srila. I was not surrendered very well to book distribution. Over the years, I was the treasurer and did different services, but book distribution was always difficult for me. But to tell you the truth, when I did surrender to it, it was such nectar, and there was no better way to see Srila Prabhupada other than coming off of book distribution. We were in 3 devotees in a van going around and distributing Back to Godhead magazines. And anyway, what I remember of Srila Prabhupada in person in Coconut Grove, what stands out in my mind and my memory and my heart more than anything else is Srila Prabhupada's humility, his incredible humility. It was something you could see. You could only really see it in person, in his eyes all the time. And throughout I remember they had set up a Vyasa-san outside in Miami, and we had Guru Puja, and before that, actually, devotees were bringing the little children up. It was like everybody wanted their children to go up and meet Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada was just, so jovial and happy with the children and playful with the children, and that was wonderful to see. But then I just noticed during the Guru Puja and everything that Srila Prabhupada, I was watching. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. I was watching for every little gesture, every little look of his eyes, and he had genuine humility. I got the sense that he was doing his service to his spiritual master and to Krishna by accepting worship. That he was not wanting to be worshipped as God or something like that. You know, I could feel at it. I could see that and feel that. And both at the morning Guru Puja and later when we had temple services inside. And all the devotees were extremely excited. Everyone was running around doing different preparations and different services, and I was asked to help to build a massage table for Srila Prabhupada. And he had some issues with his material body, and it was just incredible ecstasy, just participating in all of that. And like Bushar Prabhu mentioned, I also got a brief glance from Srila Prabhupada that I remember inside the temple. We were having kirtan, and I was up as close as I could get to Srila Prabhupada, and I got just a momentary glance from him, and it's something that I'll never forget, you know. And what I felt was the importance of Krishna consciousness and how important it was. So that was actually the only time I saw Srila Prabhupada in person, but it was wonderful, and I'll never forget it. And the other thing I'll just say is, then my experience over the years following that in the temple was worshiping Srila Prabhupada by doing daily devotional service, worshiping him, his picture on the Vyasasan. The same feelings and realizations came that I had when I was in person seeing Srila Prabhupada. He really was there, even though his I won't say material body, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual body. Prabhupada was somewhere else, but he was there on the Vyasasan. He was there in the kitchen when we were cooking. He was there in the treasury when I was counting the Lakshmi from the Sankirtan devotees. He was there definitely out on Sankirtan just when we were distributing books. And the feeling was the same. There was a quality that we always felt, and that we all can feel now. So anyway, thanks for listening. Hare Krishna.
Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschita Desatarane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So my name is Asura Kulanashana Das, and I first began reading Srila Prabhupada's books when I was still in high school. I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there were no temples in that town. There was a university, Indiana University, down in Bloomington, Indiana, and they had a preaching center there from the devotees in Detroit. So I had a friend of mine, close friend of mine, a schoolmate, and his brother was attending the university there in Bloomington. So I was at this friend of mine's house, and the boy that was going to school at Indiana University had brought a BTG home with him. So I had taken that BTG home and was reading that at home and became quite interested. I was searching for something more than just Christian religion. And so I read this BTG and then ordered some of the books through the magazine. I ordered Teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Nectar of Devotion and a few of the smaller books. And I was reading those at home while I was still in high school, and the books would just be there in the living room. And I must have read those for several years. Then a friend of mine moved out to California, La Jolla, California. So one Thanksgiving, he was home on vacation from college, And so I went out to visit him in La Jolla. So after he went back to college, I was hitchhiking up the highway. I was going to go to Laguna Beach, where I had previously gone on a road trip with some other boys. You know, we were just hippies back then. I think this was, you know, in 1970 or around that time. So anyway, I traveled up, went to Laguna Beach, and met devotees on the street there. A devotee was out distributing magazines. And so I went with him back to the temple and moved into the temple at that time. I had, you know, long hair, you know, as most of the hippie types did back then. So I stayed in the temple for about a week and then shaved up. And so it was to my great fortune that, you know, being there in Southern California, Prabhupada would come to Los Angeles quite regularly. So we would always, right after Mangalartik, everyone would pile into the van and we would drive up to Los Angeles to hear Srila Prabhupada give Srimad Bhagavatam class. So that was the first time that I saw Srila Prabhupada was when we went to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class, and Prabhupada then would sing Jaya Radha Madhava. And of course it was just very ecstatic. I can remember, you know, certain things, you know, when Prabhupada would be giving the lecture, devotees would sometimes be falling asleep. You know, it was early in the morning, and so he would have them open the doors and let all this cold air in, and you'd be shivering then. Of course, you couldn't go to sleep. Prabhupada is very expert at, you know, keeping one's attention. And then another time I recall devotees nodding out during Bhagavatam class. So Prabhupada would immediately start talking about sex life, sex life. And immediately the devotees would perk right up. Oh, yes, let me hear, what is Srila Prabhupada talking about? So he was very expert at keeping one's attention, even for those of us who were falling asleep. And then I took initiation in 1972 there in Los Angeles, and Prabhupada was present. There were quite a few initiations at one time, probably 4 devotees from Laguna Beach. We all took initiation at the same time, and we would, Prabhupada would have us repeat the 4 regulative principles, and then we would go up and pair obeisances, and he would hand us our japa beads. So I went up, said the 4 regulative principles, and he handed me the beads, and then I went and sat down. And when I sat down, he asked me, he said, you know, he said, my name is Asura Kulanashana, and that's a very long name, and I had, you know, no idea what it meant. I couldn't even say it. It was so long. And so he said, do you know what this name means, Asura Kulanashana? And he said it means the killer of the demons. But my response to him was, you know, he said, do you know who the demons are? And, you know, I wasn't quite sure what to say. I said, the karmis. And so everyone laughed, you know. And so anyway, then some months later, Prabhupada had requested a few devotees from the temples to go to India and serve in India. So I was fortunate enough to get to go, and I lived in Bombay then. And Prabhupada spent most of his time in Bombay when he was in India. His headquarters were there. So I got a lot more association there than when we would just travel up to Los Angeles. Prabhupada would give a Bhagavad Gita class every night, so I would get to listen to Bhagavad Gita class. And then after Bhagavad Gita class, they would bring out a large plate of halava, and Prabhupada would pass out halava personally to everyone there. And there would be a lot of guests, not just the devotees who would come to hear the lecture. And I recall this one time in particular, I was standing right in the front, right next to Srila Prabhupada as he was passing out the halava. And he would very carefully, you know, take a big lump of halva and hand it to each person, put it in their hand. And I was standing right next to him. And he passed out the halva. It must have taken 15 minutes, and he waited until the very end and finally gave me halva. You know, I'm thinking, well, he must see me. I'm standing right here. You know, why isn't he giving me halva? So it was my fortune to be able to stand and be very close to Srila Prabhupada that whole time. And finally, at the very end, he gave me some halva. So, and then of course you would immediately take that prasadam. And I was also able to go on a few japa walks with Prabhupada, once on the beach, and once as we were walking through the streets there in Juhu Beach. One thing that was common, that all the street children would follow the devotees, and they would all be chanting Haribol, Haribol. And Prabhupada, he stopped and he commented. He said, "This is the perfection of our movement." So that everyone was chanting, even the street children were chanting Haribol, Haribol. So I was, fortunate in that way to get some personal association with Srila Prabhupada. Another time I was given the duty to collect Prabhupada's yogurt at lunch. He would have dahi from one of the local shops brought, and so I would ride a bicycle down to this yogurt shop and have the yogurt in a bucket, and then I would take that yogurt up to his quarters, where the cook was preparing his meals. So I can remember I would go into the room, and usually Srila Prabhupada would be sitting doing translating work at his table, and I would set the bucket down, pay my obeisances, and Prabhupada would glance at me and see me and acknowledge that I was there. So it was very wonderful getting to have a little personal contact with Srila Prabhupada. And I just want to say that that if it weren't for Srila Prabhupada, who knows where we would all be at this time. We're so very fortunate. Jai Haribol, all glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Pasacha Dasatarane Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanjana Salakaya Shakshulamitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and to my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, has kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, I'm always indebted to His Divine Grace. I never heard of Krishna in my entire life before I became a devotee. The closest thing that I come to anything related to Krishna is my high school, where there's an Indian girl sitting right in front of me. That was it. So, back in the day, my parents were being separated, and we were living in California at the time. And so it was me, my brother, my sister, and my father were moving back to Texas. So on the way to Texas, it's like 4 or 5 states, from California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, like that. Anyway, so we had this station wagon with a U-Haul, and we were at the Yuma Desert on Arizona, and there's this steep mountain range. So the vehicle was going so slow, and I was in the passenger side in the front, looking at a map. It was so boring. So the car was going so slow. So I was wondering, I said, why are we going so slow? So I put the map down, and I looked forward, and there was this bus. And it said on the license plate, Hare Krishna. So, but I didn't know what it is. Just a bus with the Hare Krishna sign on it. I actually didn't even know how to pronounce the word Krishna. I was going Hare Krishna, whatever. So then, a few years later, I was out in Houston, because that's my hometown, Houston, Texas. I was looking for a job. So anyway, I was coming out of the Woodworth. I was in downtown Houston, coming out of the Woodworth. And just about when I come into this sidewalk, I heard this cling, cling, ching, cling, 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 cling. And so I turned around to my left, and I looked, and I see a bunch of Hare Krishnas, which I didn't know who they were, and they were all with saffron, shaven heads and everything. But I was, first of all, I said, man, these people look kind of weird. So anyway, so they passing by, and they had me pass me one of these invitational cards. So I read it, and it goes, oh, you're invited to a free feast, and so forth. Okay. So that night, I was feeling distressful, and I was in my bed, and because I was Catholic at the time, and Jesus was my guru. So I was praying to Jesus, please, Jesus, show me the way. So anyway, I went to the feast, and I was attracted by the devotees. It wasn't no Krishna conscious literature, because I didn't know anything about it. But I was attracted to the devotees. So much attracted by the devotees that I moved in that same week. So then one morning, I was coming outside in the yard. They had like this big parking lot. This was in Rosalie, First Houston Temple. So I go outside, I go down the steps, and I look, and I see this big bus. So I'm curious. The bus was open, so I walked in, and there was this brahmachari in the bus, and he was asking me, what's my name? We were just talking, and he was telling me, we go to the college programs, we do this, we do that. So he asked me, if I was married, and I said no. He said, would you like to come and travel with us? And to me, it sounded kind of like a great idea. So I went and asked the temple president. At that time was Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu. And he said, yes, you can go. So I got on that bus. So then I didn't know that bus was a Radha Damodar bus. That bus was, who was in charge was Adi Kejava Prabhu at that time. He was in the Swami. So I got on the bus, and we started going to the college preaching programs. We would have prasadam with a food cart, bhajans. Adi Kejava would do bhajans like that. And after that, I would finish the program. We would pack up everything. I was in charge of cleaning up the kitchen and the pots and everything. And then from there, I went to Sankirtan and come back at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So anyway, the only reason why I was able to see Srila Prabhupada at least a dozen times is because that bus. If I would have been in some temple, because there's a lot of devotees who had been initiated by Prabhupada, but had never personally seen him. So I feel very fortunate that I was personally initiated by Prabhupada, directed by himself. This was in Chicago, 1975, among 75 other devotees. Anyway, so, and it dawned on me, I was 21, I didn't know better at all. So anyway, it dawned on me that, this is the Radha Damodar. One of the buses when I was moving from California to Texas. it just dawned on me that, oh, it's a Radha Damodar bus party. Yes. So I feel that it was meant for me to meet Srila Prabhupada, because they say in scriptures, it says that if you have maybe a slight desire, that Krishna will send you a pure devotee, and that pure devotee will send you to Krishna. So, if anything, maybe because of that. Other than that, no qualification whatsoever. Simply by the mercy of the spirit of the pure devotee. Now, the thing about Srila Prabhupada, I have seen through the years that some devotees, they think that Srila Prabhupada became a pure devotee. But I say that Srila Prabhupada is a direct, personal associate of Sri Krishna. Yes. I think Bhavananda Prabhu was mentioning in one of the memorial memory tapes when Prabhupada was explaining that he didn't really want to come here to the material world. I don't want to come here. Anyway, so Krishna asked him, you go there, you do the books, and I'll take care of the rest. So just by hearing that, why would anyone, you think Prabhupada is a liar or a cheater? No, obviously. Whatever he says is a fact. One thing is that at one time, there's one of the videos Prabhupada's explaining that the women are less intelligent. Now, of course, some women would take offense to that. But Srila Prabhupada is not on the material platform. He is not a male chauvinist. You have to accept what he says, this and that. You can't just accept this and don't accept that. One time, these devotees, anyway, I don't know the precise way, but the understanding is these devotees were walking and the Samatajis were coming by and they seen Prabhupada, so they paid their obeisances to Prabhupada. Some of the male devotees, they feel a little too proud, thinking, we're with Prabhupada and so forth. So Srila Prabhupada knows everything because Super Soul is telling him everything. So Prabhupada said, yes, women are less intelligent, but then he pointed to the devotees, those female devotees, he says, but if you associate with these devotees, these women, you go home back to Godhead. So you have to accept whatever Prabhupada says. He's not going to dare to cheat you. He's not there to lie. The pure devotee is only there to help you. That's it. That is his service to Krishna, is to help you. Help me. So I feel very indebted to Prabhupada. For a person who never know anything about Krishna, because of his sacrifice to help people like me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maheshwar Das. Maheshwar.
Hare Krishna. My name is Sarvasiddhi Ratas. I am the brother of Adarshi Das, my blessed brother, and my wife, Swayam Prabhadasi, and I'm the father of Daru Krishna Das. And what happened? We all became Krishna conscious together. my wife and I, we were very young. We were living in one of the most isolated places in the United States, in northern Vermont, right on the Canadian border. We're living no electricity, no running water. And my brother, he had joined the Brooklyn Temple. And then I hadn't seen him for years, but I found out that he had joined and went to the temple. And I was just very much amazed. We were, I guess, we were almost like hermit type people, living very isolated. But I saw what was going on, went back to Vermont, and had no job. We lived on food stamps, a small amount, I think $70 a month, and we were living that way. And my brother's, I said, well, I have no money. He wanted me to read books, so I used to send him food stamps, and he'd send me books, food stamps for books, till I had an entire library, every paperback book. And he sent me beads one day, and he said, well, you then to chant, and chant 16 rounds. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, just set a goal, he said, and then just keep going for that goal. So first day, I tried chanting. I was able to do 2 rounds. I was pretty encouraged because it takes, you have to control your mind. And by the 4th day, the 4th day I chanted 4 rounds. And then the next day I chanted 16 rounds. So we're just living there, reading the books, chanting 16 rounds. And I must have been chanting 16 rounds a year before I ever went to the temple for the 2nd time. So during that time, then Dara was born. He was born at home. I delivered Dara. And so then we decided, well, we should maybe, by Krishna's arrangement, we should leave this place, go to where it's warm at least, because there was still 4 feet of snow on the ground. And you developed something called cabin fever. So we had it pretty bad. It was like in April it must have been April or May. We decided, well, there's a temple in Arizona. Let's go to Phoenix, Arizona, because her brother was living there. So we went to Phoenix, Arizona, almost immediately joined the temple. And so that's how we got going. But then there's a big Rath Yatra in Berkeley, California. The devotees had just moved into a new temple building in Berkeley. Big, huge opening. Prabhupada was there. So we went to the opening. And we were just new bhaktas. And there are hundreds and hundreds of devotees in this big, huge temple room. And we were all the way into the back of the room. We weren't quite sure how to act or what was really going on. Just Prabhupada was there. And hundreds of devotees. So something happened to us. We were offering our obeisances, and we were as far away from Prabhupada as could be. It was only us and then the wall. And we were offering obeisances, and then we just heard something fall at our heads. And when we looked up, there was an almond in front of Daru's head, an almond in front of my head, and 2 almonds in front of Swami Prabhupada's head. She was pregnant. Prabhupada was throwing almonds, and they landed just like that. And at that time, like it was mentioned, Prabhupada would be giving cookies to all the children. There's so many devotees there, and Dara was maybe 1 year old, maybe a little around that size, just little. So we'd pass him up, and we'd still be so far away, but one devotee would take him, pass him to another devotee, and another devotee, and another devotee, up to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would give him in his hand a cookie. This is like, this went on 5 days in a row, the same way. And then from that day on, he would address Prabhupada as Cookie Pod. And everything that Prabhupada has ever said has come true. Like Prabhu here said, he just said that. He said, Prabhupada only tells the truth. And everything that Prabhupada has said has come true. One time it was in the 70s, and it was the height of the Cold War. And the United States thought that we'd be attacked by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union thought they'd be being attacked by the United States. It was a very tense time in the world. And all of a sudden, one time Prabhupada said, well, communist countries, they're going to become, very religious. They'll become Christian conscious. They'll also take back to Christianity, and things will go good. And all the devotees were looking at each other. I remember, how is this going to happen? These people are communists. They're opposed. They're completely opposed to God. Even if you mention the name God, you could be locked up for that. But sure enough, even though the devotees couldn't understand, now in all these former Soviet bloc countries, all through Eastern, previously communist countries, there's a Hare Krishna movement's very big. There's over 40,000 initiated devotees in previously communist countries. In Poland, they have a big festival every year, and 300 or more devotees get up on stage and have a big, huge kirtan in front of hundreds of thousands of people. So Prabhupada said that it seemed completely, no one could understand how it was, yet it happened. And another thing that Prabhupada said, he said that we should name our children names of Krishna. And I see there are many people that have children, many young adults that someday will have children. And you should all name your children names of Krishna, because this is what will happen. We named all our children names of Krishna. And two of our children in particular, and our children have named their children names of Krishna. Like Dara's children, Krishna, Gopal, Madhava. My daughter's son's name Rama. Another grandson is Keshava. And this is what happened. As time went on, we had to enroll children in bigger and bigger schools, because I've always been a householder. I never had the privilege of being brahmachari. So I've always been for the householders and admiring the brahmacharis very much. But as a result of going to high school, my son Krishna, he's much of a showman. And he'd always be doing something. We just have a small high school. But he'd walk in, and one time the whole high school is actually the center of all the activities. Voting goes on in the auditorium. Every town meeting takes place there. Krishna walks into the school, into the auditorium, makes his showman-like entrance, and the entire auditorium bursts out, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And these are people that don't know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. They're highly unreligious people. My daughter Govinda also worked in the office, and all the time, will Govinda please report to the office? This went on for years, and my son Narayan, who's right over there, Narayan, 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 the whole school, everyone. So please name your children names of Krishna, because all these people, now they're always talking about Krishna, Govinda, Narayan. That's what Prabhupada wants. That's spreading the holy name of the Lord. Thank you very much, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. I will keep this very brief, but what Sarvasiddhira doesn't know is I met the devotees before I met him. I was right out of high school in a little town in upstate New Hampshire, which is upstate anyway. In 1970, the devotees came to my house dressed in their saffron cloth, tilak, shaved up, sika. And the only reason that I wasn't scared of them is because I noticed they had on Converse All-Star sneakers. So I said, okay, they're not aliens. So maybe I should listen to what they're going to say. So they came to my house, they gave us prasadam and talked to us about Krishna consciousness. And then I moved, that was in San Bernardino. Then I moved to Berkeley, and the devotees came to my house again with prasadam and books. I don't quite remember if they were dressed like devotees, but I think there was a lady that had a sari on. Then we moved to Vermont, and the devotees trucked through the woods to where Daro Brahman was born. Daro Krishna now, but 3 miles into the woods, and gave us prasadam and a poster and told us about devotional service. So now every time the devotees come to my house, they want to sing around the campfire the Hare Krishna song. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. My name is Adarshi Das, and I'll tell you a brief story how I first met Srila Prabhupada. In 1973, I was visiting the temple every day and chanting, and I was very friendly with Romapad Swami, who was the Sankirtan leader there in Brooklyn, and he took a great interest in me because I had a car. And so I was coming every day and chanting, and then I was driving out devotees to sell Prabhupada's books. And after a few weeks, one day at the end of, we came back, it was late at night, and Romapad Maharaj said to me, so tonight, at that time he wasn't a Swami, but he said, tonight, when you go home, get all your things and bring them. I said, why? What's going on? He said, your spiritual master is coming here in 2 days. After tonight, you're never going home again. So I brought everything the next day, and the temple president there, Gopi Janaballabha, he said he had heard that I had been working part-time as a house painter. So he said, okay, now you're going to paint Srila Prabhupada's quarters. So for 2 days, we worked day and night to paint all Srila Prabhupada's quarters. Interestingly enough, some years later, Srila Prabhupada once said that, he said, even though I've traveled all around the world many times, wherever I go, I smell fresh paint. So, Srila Prabhupada was going to arrive at JFK Airport in the old International Arrivals building. And my parents had given me a Cadillac actually for my 18th birthday. It was an old Cadillac with big fins and everything. So all devotees piled in the Cadillac, and as we're driving down the Van Wyck Expressway, I hit something, and the tailpipe was dragging on the ground, and sparks were flying. I pulled over. I didn't know what would happen. I was only 18. So the senior-most brahmachari in the car, he leaped out of the car and crawled under the car, feet first, face up, and kicked that muffler right off that car. I thought we were going to call a tow truck or something. He said, Prabhu, everything is purified on the way to Krishna. Now get back in the car. We're going to see Srila Prabhupada. So when we got to the old International Rivals building, had a very large central area. And devotees had come from all around the whole country. As some devotees have mentioned here, devotees were initiated, had never met Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes they were initiated by letter. So devotees had come from Ohio, from Pennsylvania, from Washington, from Canada. there were probably a few hundred devotees there, and a massive kirtan started there, right in the middle of the airport. Well, the policemen were looking at, they didn't know what to do. They'd never seen anything like this before. And then Srila Prabhupada came. At that time, the arrivals would come from the second floor, and they'd come down an escalator. So when Srila Prabhupada got to the top of the escalator, I looked up and I saw that Prabhupada was glowing, that Prabhupada had an effulgence. Prabhupada came down, and there was a bunch of TV cameras. Reporters were there, and there was a young TV reporter. And his mission was to get the story that brainwashing, that at that time the media was saying that Prabhupada was brainwashing people and they were joining this cult. So Prabhupada came down, he's smiling, the reporter, young, very good-looking young man, he said to Srila Prabhupada, he said, "So, what are you telling these young people? How are you getting them to join your movement? Why are they changing their lives?" So Srila Prabhupada said, "So, young people in your country are all unhappy because at present they're simply swimming in an ocean of nescience." So the reporter was astonished. He couldn't say another word. Then he had to ask Srila Prabhupada submissively, what did that mean? So he began to ask questions, and Prabhupada very patiently began to explain how actually we're not the body, and we can never enjoy here within this material world through this body. So the reporter was absolutely captivated by Srila Prabhupada. Then Prabhupada began questioning him. Srila Prabhupada said, "So, why don't you join us?" The reporter was, I can't. Srila Prabhupada said, "Why not?" He said, "I guess I'm just swimming in an ocean of nescience." At that time, I realized that Srila Prabhupada was the greatest genius and greatest philosopher. And I knew that I would never, ever leave Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. So then, our temple president, Gopi Jana Ballabha, had rented a large black limousine for Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada began to walk towards the limousine. And Prabhupada was walking in a very aristocratic manner. And I was only 18 years old, but I was running. I couldn't keep up with Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada got into the limousine, and so now we had to race to our cars to get to the Brooklyn Temple before Srila Prabhupada. So there was this huge, crazy caravan of devotees driving back. So we all got back, and there was a massive kirtan there on the street, up the steps into the temple. Prabhupada came into the temple room, and he paid obeisances to Radha and Govinda. And then he sat down on the Vyasasana, and this giant kirtan stopped. And Srila Prabhupada looked around. He said, "This is not Brooklyn. This is Vaikuntha." Srila Prabhupada ki jai!
Jai, thank you. Hare Krishna. My name is Madhuha Das. I met the devotees first on the island of Maui, and then on the Big Island at a place I was living there, a small commune. And then when Srila Prabhupada came to Honolulu to install Panchatattva shortly after Gaur Purnima in 1972, I moved in the temple then, and that was that. And we've heard a lot of memories from devotees, and we went on several morning walks with Srila Prabhupada in Honolulu, and there's lots of little stories. But this year, the devotees in Prabhupada Village, it's a farm in North Carolina where I live, we wrote an offering on Prabhupada's Vyas Puja Day, and because it was about the Jaladuta and Prabhupada's arrival, I thought if it's okay with you, I could read it. Yes. Is there time? Okay. Something wonderful occurred in Boston, Massachusetts in August of 1965. This was the most auspicious day human society has known for hundreds of years, because it was on this day that Srila Prabhupada stepped off the Jaladuta and placed his lotus feet on the soil of America, thus changing the destiny of the world forever. Someone may say that such a statement is the exaggerated sentiment of a disciple, a subjective reality. It is not. This is an objective truth to be pondered here that will give us a tiny glimpse of the glory of the person we know, love, and worship, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. If Srila Prabhupada had not come, hundreds of temples never would have been built. Krishna-conscious farm communities never would have been established. Tens of thousands of devotees never would have accepted initiation and a life of Krishna consciousness. Literally, millions of people never would have even heard the name Krishna, and Google searches would only turn up a handful of obscure encyclopedic references. There would be no Hare Krishna cinema, no devotional music, no dance, no art. And there would be no deity worship in tens of thousands of homes and temples around the globe. Millions of people never would have tasted prasadam. There would be no Hare Krishna restaurants. There would be no Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and no Chaitanya Charitamrita. No nectar of devotion in English, Spanish, Japanese, Russian, and dozens of other major languages. There would be no BBT. Tens of millions of people would never have received one of these priceless books that illuminate the highest objective of human life. The multitude of prolific Vaishnava authors that followed in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps would be busy writing about some other topic. There would be no festivals, no Harinam Sankirtan, and thousands of pious souls that took birth in devotee families would be looking for some other planet to be born where Lord Chaitanya's Leela is occurring. There would be no initiations, no devotee sangha, and all would be void, sunyata, if Srila Prabhupada had never stepped off the Jaladuta. This point of view is not the annual rambling of a fawning disciple. It is not fanatic eulogy. These are hard, irrefutable facts. Whatever we know about Krishna, and frankly, whatever most anyone knows about Krishna outside of India, had its beginning in those first sacred steps at Boston Harbor. Someone may say, well, what about all the other devotee preachers that came after Srila Prabhupada? We will respond that indeed their service to Mahaprabhu's movement is glorious, but each and every one of them eat the blessed remnants off the plate of Srila Prabhupada's powerful kirtan that showered the grace on every continent of the world. He was the pioneer. He showed the way, and he slashed through Kali's dark jungle, clearing the field for generations to come. It is only by his dedication and sacrifice that there is any kind of preaching field at all outside the borders of India. If he had not come and laid down the foundation, there would be no waiting devotees, no dakshin, no initiations, and no devotee homes for preaching and expansion of missions. The only reason that any of these facilities exist is because Srila Prabhupada stepped off the Jaladuta. Ask any Wala in Vrindavan or Mayapur that's old enough to remember what the town was like before Srila Prabhupada left the divine shelter of Sri Sri Radha Damodar Mandir in Vrindavan for the Lower East Side of New York City. They all know that it was Srila Prabhupada that put the Lord's hometown on the map and brought crores of rupees, temples, new construction, and prosperity to otherwise materially impoverished villages. All of Vrindavan and Mayapur's worldwide renown exists today because Srila Prabhupada stepped off the Jaladuta. Today, kirtan is the rage and public venues fill with eager participants. But Srila Prabhupada was the original kirtaneer, the first who sat alone in Tompkins Square Park with his little tom-tom drumming out the rhythm of Lord Krishna's holy names before any of these people were even born. Sadly, he is not given credit. But today, Harinam Sankirtan reverberates in yoga studios, in devotee homes, in temples, on downtown sidewalks, and music festivals in nearly every country of the world, only because Srila Prabhupada stepped off the Jaladuta. And finally, we are all sitting here in the blessed association of devotees, remembering and appreciating his qualities and his influence in our lives. In one of hundreds of such gatherings around the globe, only because Srila Prabhupada stepped off the Jaladuta. Let us ponder these truths, and as we meditate thrice daily, Ayam Guru Devaya Vidmahe Krishnanandaya Dimahe Diyayona Prachodaya. Try to grasp the meaning of this sacred mantra. Try to know Srila Prabhupada and the degree to which he pleased Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and how much he was absorbed in doing so, and attempt to fathom the breadth and depth of Srila Prabhupada's accomplishments. Doing so will cause the creeper of devotion that he planted in our hearts to blossom and bear the fruit of love of God, and allow us to be fixed at his lotus feet forever. There's nothing else worth having. So it was 46 years ago that Srila Prabhupada came, and like we heard from many of the devotees here who all had his personal association, he changed people, he touched their hearts. And Prabhupada explained many times personally in his lectures in Darshan, and also throughout his books, about Vani and Vapu. Vapu is the form, his physical form, but now every one of us can have Srila Prabhupada's personal association, and through his instructions, which he left in his books. So we encourage everybody on today, from today on, most of the devotees here, everyone has Prabhupada's books in their home. But these books are not just something to fill our shelves. His books, if you want to associate with Prabhupada, his books are the best way to do it. His books, if you read his books, you understand who he is and what he wanted. And to associate with him means to follow his instructions. He wanted us to preach, like we heard from devotees about how he went out. What was your name, Prabhu? Yeah. He walked out one day and he heard the Hari Nam. And this kirtan is, Prabhupada didn't create anything from it. He's simply passing on to us Lord Chaitanya's movement. Lord Chaitanya also, he sent his followers to chant in the street. So for everybody, read Prabhupada's books daily. When you have an opportunity to go on Hari Nam, even if it's just with your husband or wife or your friends, whoever it's with, take it, do it. And today there's an opportunity at this Freedom Festival. We're going to go on Hari Nam there. Everybody should come, because when you're on Hari Nam, you're associating with Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. They're there. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.